I mean, just to be getting the bill for the ambulance reports. To
Back to the
well,
facts and
yeah. So when Bell couldn't unlock the phone, and it's followed me from one province to another, this mistakes that just don't happen to people. It shows me that there's a problem with the foundational document, with my birth certificate, with my social insurance number, and that problem isn't in an identity theft. It's a feedback loop in which it's impossible to correct retroactively because it's been done in steps and it's on a network. It's like trying to get back every email you ever sent and then release them all at the same time so that everyone agrees. Because most places can't, like even Shaw Cable, I'm having to maintain the currency of my address from 5 years ago, right? Because that fills a hole in the calendar that otherwise might be missed. So I need to, in the French have always loved their base 10, and I think they tried to put in a base 10 calendar at some point in time. And they almost had to like name every day after a different noun, just to be able to identify all the days. Well, that's essentially what I'm doing with the documents from one and another and another and another, just to, I can have the dating of the letter, I can have, a tax return year. I filed all my tax returns in the same year. And then I just asked for mail. So I asked for my final bill from Bell. Young man roommate probably worried about me, didn't call an ambulance, but saw me spread out with a year's worth of phone bills that showed up on the same day. The whole year that I've been asking, all year. So I made use of it. I photographed it, treated it like evidence, made it into columns, tracked the barcodes, created a system in which I now understand the way in which having the loaner device and paying for it created a debit in one account for the other. And so I can't like walk into a Bell store and discuss their bill with them, which really surprised me because at that point it was fresh. It was brand new in their minds. I had just been down there at the mall the week before 5 times. Say, I still can't unlock my phone. And they're like, huh, that's weird. Here's our phone booth. So after I got the new TELUS phone, and I saw the 2 activation fees, and I was able to predict what their billing would say, contrary to the contract that I signed. And then the date on which I get the bill. And I beat them to the punch by a week. So I went in and I paid my phone bill a week ahead of time to the dollar figure that it was going to be. And then when it was that dollar figure, called to have them rescinded to what it should be. And by slowing down my pace at that time to allow the error to happen again, with the solution already in place, such that when I called, it was something that they got all the time. I was able to rectify my TELUS bill. So
to put in simpler terms, like how would you, like, did you say you basically went ahead of the schedule to...
Yes. So it was the way that I had to do it was the store where I got the device and my bank debit where I was it was a Sunday. My bill was due on the Monday, and I knew that just the timeline, because it had bridged between when I tried to use the bring my own device and I wound up getting the new device, I'd asked for a contract both times. And there had been a variance in the amount of time between when I got the one contract and I got the other, and the variance was 1 day. And the explanation for that is that the tracking began across the month, throughout the end of April. And so between the end of April when I got, when I was still troubleshooting the old device and it wasn't working, and then when I got the new device and they lumped the two together, they had an average of 30.5 days, because there's not the same amount of days in the 2 months. Now that'll buff out in a year, but I also knew that because that device was still locked to Bell, and because I'd used a TELUS SIM card in that device, that it compromised my archive. So I couldn't take that security risk, just to have 2 telephone numbers on that device active. Because the important thing about allowing it to time out as it did was I was able to call my contacts, tell them I was changing my number ahead of time, change my email, change my timing of my passwords, and allow the computer to run its course, right? Just making sure that I got the last word in before it came offline. And so because the original contract, there was 30 days in the month, and the next contract there was 31 days in the month, because they're not identical plans. When you bring your own device, one is a 1-year term, the other one wound up being a 2-year term, because I couldn't bring my own device. Their plans they equalize at a different time. And so I knew that it would just be a problem, because the way that they would be tracking the device would have been just a hole I couldn't have. So I wound up going down on a Sunday, and I've been trying to get my paper bill in Braille, which I have a reason for it as well. I won't get in. It more has to do with a 1-to-1 ratio for the bill. But I was able to call and confirm with a girl on a Sunday. TELUS is good for that, by the way. At least being able to talk to somebody. And surprise her by saying, "What's my bill going to be?" And surprising her with what's it going to be with taxes and everything like that. And in the meantime, I'm making the call from the TELUS store. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay it right away, a day early, click. So then I paid half of it at the TELUS store on the Sunday, and I went across to RBC and paid the other half on the same Sunday through the bank machine, so that I would be on their books with both my accounts. So I paid sort of half of it in store at TELUS, and then 2 different bank machines with my savings and my checking. That way, there's not going to be like a crosstalk averaging that's done between my old device and my new one, because at the end of the day, I can't control. I mean, if I want to use that device for my home Wi-Fi, I mean, it's a common accommodation, right? Like we got any number of Wi-Fi signals that anyone walks around with in the course of a day, exchanging information. I don't program the apps on the phone. I don't know what's going in there. And even when I have nouns, I can't seem to introduce them, so I can't imagine if I didn't. So my reassessment of that made it necessary for me to think about units of measure and units of time and calendars, specifically with patterned events of the past, as having to tell a bulletproof story, and that's sort of what I'm doing to keep myself sort of looking ahead. At the same time, I'm doing it real time, right? So it's not like I'm ever not treating myself as providing my alibi for 2020, which is when, if it's going to be remedied by one office, it will have to be 2020 on the leap year day, and the way that it will have to be will me be changing my middle name to February 29th, just so that the autofill it can't be entered on another day. If you ever notice, next time you're just trying to pick a date on your calendar on your phone, and you try and pick February 29th, you can't do it in the years that aren't leap years, right? Then that's common enough. So I'm going to need someone to overrule that, and I'm going to need to make some sort of transaction, whether it's the receipt for the license plate that I never got, whatever it is, in that window, so that when other offices catch up, I can refer them all to one transaction number that is 100% secure in time and consistent enough to amalgamate the changes.
And why did you have to do it on the leap year? Why is that an important variable?
Because it's not it'd be like a service day. So the way that the Alberta registries are sort of synced, I guess, is by the Alberta government that sort of oversees the current files, the changes, the statuses, birth, death records. It's all shared information with traffic, with healthcare, with insurance, all of these commons. But based on very few pieces of information, just a birth date, a last name, and an address, I wasn't getting 2 out of 3. The mail was going to the wrong addresses, having been recorded as shipped. My birthday was entered wrong, and my driving was full of redundancies, and it wasn't tracking my payments. So whatever is most whatever's most interruptive of being able to just go in and renew your driver's license, no problem, sort of is fronted up there, right? So when I come to BC, the thing that pops up isn't the last 10 times that I've been here, because there's been no changes. All that it shows was the last time I was in, I owed these tickets, and then it's not like I paid at the desk, but the Interact tracks elsewhere. If it's done on a weekend, RBC tracks it on a different day. They lump their records from weekends together to a Monday. And so for the purely online aspect of it, what I found worked for me, and this is a bit of a plug, but was Spotify. I went back to my Spotify transactions, and much better than my bank, was they had a unique identifier when I changed devices. So my timed payments out of my debit account were within the day or two weekend window, but Spotify doesn't they don't track the day. They don't do Monday to Friday or anything like that. They track universal time, right? So it's like a California baseline synchronicity time. So when you get a device, you don't need to pick the time zone you're in. And because I didn't opt for any time zone, because I didn't log in and say I was from Canada, and because I wasn't tracking anything that way except my payments, and because the amounts of the payments are useful in that it's $9.99 on the 16th of every month. And it would record like a streak of transactions before there was a change. And so rather than just having the most current, I have every one of them. And so I can see when the loaner device, there's a different tracking number. I can see when I pulled it out of a different bank account, there's a different tracking number. And so as long as that is over, and it means I had to end my Spotify contract in order to keep maintain the integrity of the noun, I call it. As soon as I print that off and photograph it, or even transfer it as like a working calendar, I all of a sudden have like day 1 through day 6,000 whatever, and all the payments are included as part of the day. So there's no square roots, no decimals. It's all numbers.
It's all straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just trying to word this properly here. We're kind of wrap up with like just if you were to say what the main problem is, how you manage to solve said problem, and if you do it in about a minute.
Main problem is measurement. We're built for a lot of mathematical calculations nowadays. They're orders of magnitude removed from the human experience, from what you can hold in your hand, what you can compare, what you can count, what you can leave on your dresser at home and know it'll be there. And so my suggestion for this generation after me is to mine that, because it's not going to be the same language of what is a fact and what isn't. And I'm finding that it's already sort of the case. So I'm not saying start documenting your life, but I'm saying maybe start keeping an archive, a little standalone thing, maybe a USB, at least for your taxes, for your identity paperwork and things like that. Keep them out of the cloud.
And why is that? Just to be clear.
Just so that you know you have the only the latest copy of it, right? Because a digital image has a particular size, it has a particular format, it has a particular sender. No matter where it goes, it will never have that again. And so those original one-to-one timestamps are more useful now than a scratch on a pad from the post office, right? So just try and come up with a systematic way of documenting yourself, because I'm looking now. I don't have any kids or anything, and I'm going to be dying in the same age that people are starting to keep lifelong records. I really hope mine is right, especially since it'll be more so thanks to you guys for your helping let me get it all in one place. Never been able to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's call it cut.
Cutting.